Hello astronauts of all ages. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to begin crafting and setting up your factories. So I'm going to start by opening up my inventory. Now I'm going to assume you've already found an asteroid and gathered some basic resources. Now with these resources, the very first thing we're going to want to do is go to craft capsules. And you'll notice this loading bar here. Each time that fills is when it's going to produce something. I'm going to throw some ore in there, and you see it's starting to produce alloyed metal mesh. And each time this fills, you'll see it pop in there again. There we go. Now for the shards that I got here, these both came from the same asteroid, by the way, you will get crystal circuits. Both of these are the basis for almost everything you're going to craft in the game. So it's really important to collect raw ore as well as raw crystals or shards. Now if I click production info here, it shows me what I get for each type of ore and shard. In this case, for any type of ore, I'm just going to get 10 alloyed metal mesh, and any type of shard, I'm going to get 10 crystal circuits. And if you click your inventory button up here, you just switch back to your inventory view. Now you don't have to watch this craft. It will actually continue even if you have exited your inventory. Now the next step to getting your factories working, you're going to want to go to Craft Factory. And if we click on production info, we can see that for 10 alloyed metal mesh, it'll produce a basic factory, or for 10 crystal circuits, we get one basic factory. So essentially, off of one ore or one raw shard, you can get your first factory and plunk it down on any space station or planet you own. Now, as for the factory blocks, we've got a few different kinds. The first is a capsule refinery. It basically does the exact same thing as what the craft capsules did in our inventory. If I put a raw ore there, we see it produces 2 items. It not only produces the alloyed metal mesh, but it also gave us some capsules of that ore type. You can also place the materials that asteroids are made of that are just plain blocks and still get different capsules from them. In this case, cinnabar, which is really handy. If I go ahead and stick all of these in here, it's just going to start pumping out resources for all of them at the same time. And if we go to production info, again, you can see all the different recipes that this block will handle. And it's actually pretty varied. This is one of the blocks you're going to base everything off of. Now we haven't built this yet, but you can build it from your main factory block. This is your basic factory, and when you open it up, it's going to look something like this. Now, there's 3 main buttons, and all of the factory blocks have activate. All you have to do is click that, it turns to inactive, and it'll actually stop using power and stop producing. For now, I'm not going to bother having anything inactive, as I've built a platform with plenty of energy, but in some cases I could see why someone might want to be able to turn them off. Now, in change production type, if we click on that, we get a small window with a drop-down menu. And this contains all the different possible blocks we can create with this factory. Now, we also have a drop-down filter. So if we were to type something into it, in this case standard, and we go to our drop-down menu, it's filtered by that word that we typed in. And we're going to want a standard factory, because the regular factory is limited. We can't build any weapon systems, we can't build effects systems, and so all we can do is build very, very basic ships with almost nothing. I mean, we've got some power blocks in here somewhere and decorative blocks. We've got glass, and we have the very basic hole that you can make. But that's not a whole lot to go off of, especially if you're planning to build a Titan. So we're going to make a standard factory and select it. And I'm going to click OK. Alright, now that we have our standard factory selected, the way we find out what is required to produce one is press the graph button. Here we can see what we're producing, which is a standard factory, and down here we can see what's required to make it. In this case, 20 alloyed metal mesh and 20 circuits. So I'm going to go ahead and put 20 of each inside. And voila, we have our standard factory. Also, you can make the capsule refinery from here as well, which is down in C. There we go. Capsule refinery, which requires 10 of each metal mesh and the crystal circuits. Now, the advanced factory block is exactly the same as the basic. The only difference is what it produces. In this case, we can start producing logic blocks, weapon blocks, some more advanced circuits and lights, and instead of the basic hull, we now have black standard armor. And one step up from this would be the hardened hull or advanced armor, and that's produced by the advanced factory block, which can also be built from the standard factory block. Right here, advanced factory. Now, if I were to select anything from this list, in this case let's take a missile tube, again, graphing will show us exactly what it takes, and you'll notice the recipes require a bit more now. You'll also notice that if I go and find a bit of hull and graph it, it's based off the standard type of hull that we had originally, and it even further shows what that is made of. So we've got the Tetra, which is made from the regular armor, and then we've got the regular hull plus the Natchet capsule combining to make the regular standard armor. So you get a nice tree view of all the basic necessities needed to make something, from the absolute lowest level all the way up to what you're trying to create, which is really handy when we get to the advanced portion. And let's say we want to create some effect modules. Let's say EMP, for example. And pretty soon you start getting things that are crafted through other factories. Let me get a better example. Here we go. Advanced hull. This would be the old hardened hull. And you can see that it requires one of the regular blocks, since this is a wedge. That one required standard armor with an ingot, and the ingot was created from capsules, and the regular standard armor was created from the hull block, like we saw before, and it just goes down the line. It gets really, really handy. But most of what you're going to be starting with is going to come from your basic and standard factory. You can probably hold off on buying or building an advanced factory for a while. The next one I'm going to show you is the microassembler. Now, the microassembler is similar to the capsule crafting or capsule refinery, except that it actually takes the scrap alloy and scrap composite and turns it into full metal mesh or crystal circuits, which is really handy because space stations now only give you scrap when you harvest them. So you can still harvest the abandoned space stations, but you're essentially getting much less resources from it. You can also take your capsules you've created and turn them into crystal circuits. And I haven't ever used that yet, but it seems like it might be helpful at some point. You can also turn some of the capsules into metal mesh as well. Lastly, we have these two blocks. Now the first one is actually an enhancer, and they work the same way enhancers used to with factories. I'll select the factory and then hit V to attach it to the enhancer. Now, back to our capsule refining recipe, it requires 10 of each. Oh, and I'm a little short. Luckily, this one's been crafting for me in the meantime. You can see I've gotten quite a few resources out of it. Alright, so if I put 10 and 10, like the recipe calls for, oops, not 110, there is a little bit of a glitch when moving items sometimes. You'll see it'll give us one capsule refinery. However, if we have enough resources, now that we've added an enhancer block, we can actually create 2 at a time. Each enhancer block will increase the efficiency by a factor of 1. So it's like each one of the enhancer blocks is adding the capacity of another factory block to this one, which is really helpful if you're mass producing, say, basic hull because you want to then make standard armor. You're going to probably want to be producing that at a pretty high rate. Lastly is the storage block. The storage block is interesting. If I were to attach the storage block to my factory, the storage block, I'll then go to filter and add. And we were making, let's see, I believe it was capsule refineries. Right there. Okay. Now it'll allow capsule refineries to be moved into this storage device every time it has a tick. So if we go back to producing them, it should produce some here and then send it over to the storage. Oh, I may have had it reversed. There we go. Yeah. Okay, I take it back. It's not selecting the factory block. You actually have to select the storage and tell the storage what to pull out. That was my mistake. So you can also set the total quantity that it'll take each time it pulls out an item. So if, for example, we were mass producing hull, we might want 100. And in this case, I set everything, and it's going to try and take everything it possibly can. We also have the clear button in case you do what I did and messed up. If I wanted an activation module, you can also change the count individually right here. Say maybe I want 10 of that item. You can also remove it. And that pretty much covers all the basics of crafting. You'll just have to figure out what all the recipes are on your own. I'm sure there's plenty of information about those on wikis and such, so I'm not going to go into any of that now. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.